Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the current situation in Pakistan with regards to the political and economic fronts. On the political front, of course, post-elections, there is still uncertainty with regards to who is going to be forming the government, who's going to be the Prime Minister, who's going to be part of the federal cabinet, and which political parties will we be seeing on the front. This is, of course, something that is emerging and is underway as different alliances and discussions between different political parties are also on their way. The important formations that we see so far is that of the PPP and PMLN and other parties, including the MQMP and others, that have joined hands together with each other against what is being called the issue with regards to the challenges that the government faces and for the progress of the country. And so the 6 political parties have joined hands together and want to take the country forward, putting their support in the prime ministerial candidate of the PMLN, with, of course, reports pointing towards the presidency going to PPP. There's, of course, other discussions going on with regards to constitutional offices taken by the PPP, including that of the heads of both houses of the parliament. And this is, of course, something that is under discussion, with the PMLN also putting forward its own candidate. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means in terms of how these political parties are going to be shaping up this alliance, how strong it is, how sustainable it is, and what would this mean for the cabinet and, of course, the different provinces. At the same time, we see the PTI and JUI-F also joining hands, an alliance that, of course, is being looked at with much controversy, with many PTI supporters also voicing their concerns with regards to standing together with a party that earlier, of course, the PTI had very serious objections with, and also vice versa. And with other political parties such as the PMLN also questioning the JUI-F chief's move with regards to standing together with the PTI on the issue of elections rigging. And this is, of course, something that we've seen come together between the two in light of the concerns that have been raised by both the parties, and, of course, with protests in the country also planned for tomorrow. So we're going to be, of course, also seeing and witnessing what exactly is going to be the outcome of tomorrow's protests and how exactly will the constituencies in which riggings have been alleged are going to unfold. At the same time, the JUI-F chief has also talked about various issues with regards to the ouster of the former Prime Minister and, of course, the former chairman of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and also talked about a lot of elements of the institutions and held them responsible, saying that he was privy to the kind of plan that was being conducted, and something, of course, that was echoed much earlier and many times by the PTI. And this, of course, has raised its own alarm bells with reference to what is going on and what sort of responsibility and accountability then comes on the parties such as the JUI-F and its chief, who are now talking about these plans and moves and, of course, have earlier benefited from them. So we're going to be taking a look at all of this and what this means for the country. Our next topic is going to take a look at what all of this is impacting on the economic front and how exactly is it influencing the way that the economic situation of the country is worsening. We know that the PSX has taken a 1,000-point hit, and this is, of course, with regards to the kind of uncertainty that we have seen in the country and in the ways that the formation of the government is still not clear, with, of course, the public awaiting a final decision with regards to who it is that's going to be taking the country forward. And, of course, with regards to the kind of coalitions that are being formed, it also seems that inherently this is also pointing towards a weak government. And this, of course, is making its way at the stock market. There is also concern with regards to the kind of prices that people have to bear, with an increase in gas prices, an increase of 67%. Also been decided just yesterday, of course, with regards to IMF conditions, but again, something that has added to the miseries of the people. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means in light of the lack of political certainty and how it's going to keep on impacting the economic front of the country in the future. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. We've also been joined online by Mr. Waqqas, who's Advocate Supreme Court of Pakistan. We also have been joined by Mr. Daniyal Sheikh, who's a political analyst. And Daniyal Sahab, I'll start with you with reference to, of course, what has been going on, especially with the kind of alliances and party formations that we've been seeing. There is, of course, the similar sort of coalition to the PDM that we have seen before, of course, now lacking the JUI-F, who seems to be aligning closely with the PTI, again, something that is being looked at with a lot of question as to what really it is going to pertain to. So I want your take on the kind of of alliances that you see forming between these political parties, and how exactly you think going forward this is going to impact the formation of government?
Well, Sana, thank you for having me on your show. Sana, so basically, the way I look at Pakistani politics, especially if you're talking about the alliance between JUI and PTI, basically, I feel that right now that the divide in PTI, there's those people who've been with Imran Khan from the start and who believe in whatever ideology they have. And then there are these opportunist parachuters who recently got an opportunity, and some of them are from the legal fraternity, and they're trying to hijack the show. So there's a clear difference, and those are the people who are leading the protest tomorrow. And whereas like the people who've been with Imran Khan from the start, like I was listening to Ali Muhammad Khan this morning, and he said that we have complete faith in the judiciary, and it was the Supreme Court that allowed myself and many other candidates from PTI to contest the election, and we're going to contest our cases on the legal forms and not on the streets. And as far as the meeting between JUI and PTI is concerned, this is definitely a change in the way Imran Khan was dealing with politics before, and now he's realized that Maulana Fazlur Rahman, if you remember, he used to mock him about his looks and about his character and everything, and now he feels that he can somehow benefit, and he feels maybe because Imran Khan feels very weak and vulnerable. But I still don't understand what the reason behind this meeting was. But anyways, as far as your other question of the government formation was concerned, I think that the mandate that has come from the people, it's put almost every political party in a very difficult situation, and whosoever forms the government, it's going to be a very weak government standing on a very narrow margin.
Right, Daniyal, let's explore the alliance between PTI and JUI-F a bit further. And as we understand it, this is with reference to the rigging that both parties are, of course, alleging. But in terms of the kind of rhetoric that has existed in the past, and how PTI has always had a front of not engaging with such political parties, do you think that this is really impacting the way PTI's followers are now looking at the party, and has also put credibility of perhaps both the parties and their principled stances under question?
No, as far as JUI was concerned, I don't think that their voters question anything. Most of them, their voters are students of Maulana Fazlur Rahman or some of his madrasas, and I don't think they have the ability to question. But as far as PTI is concerned, definitely, like this since morning, there's this video that's viral. There was this PTI jalsa, and this girl, she's crying, and and she was mocking Fazlur Rahman, and she was crying, and she's like, how are we going to face the world when this man is going to be our president? And today, definitely, those people are questioning why they were following him, or what they were following, or what Imran Khan himself, what ideology does he follow. It's definitely another U-turn, and especially in this situation, it wasn't expected.
Right. Waqqas, with reference to the allegations of rigging that, of course, continue, and how these political parties are emphasizing on, there's also, of course, protests planned in the country based on this. I want your take on what does this mean in terms of when we talk about this alliance, the fact that they're going to join hands together with reference to elections rigging. How much power, or how much influence does this have on the actual conduct of investigations into election rigging?
Thank you for having me. I think first of all, we need to recognize that this is a political alliance and doesn't really have an impact on the legal outcome. For instance, the legal route for anyone, whether an individual candidate or a political party that alleges rigging in an election in Pakistan under the Elections Act 2017, is to either approach the Election Commission, or ultimately, once the decisions of returned candidates are notified, then to file election petitions before the Election Tribunal, which is basically, a full-on civil suit where you lead evidence and you try to prove through documentary and oral evidence that rigging happened. So the JUI-F and PTI alliance, if it happens, if it leads to numbers on the streets and protests and sit-ins or whatever else it may lead to, is mostly a political alliance which I think is meant to create pressure and to send out the message to courts and to tribunals such as the Election Commission and the election tribunals that these parties feel deeply aggrieved and they're not going to let up. As far as the legal outcome is concerned, I think it won't change much. I mean, it will rest with the Election Commission and ultimately the election tribunals, who are not known. The election tribunals are not known for deciding matters speedily. So PTI's best bet, I think, will be to take one or two test cases somehow up to the Supreme Court and try and get a judgment, and then try and use it across, the length and breadth of the decisions or the constituencies that they allege have been rigged. So that's how I think it's going to pan out. But in the immediate term, I think this is a political alliance which is meant to create pressure on judicial forums, and only time will tell whether it works out or not.
Yes,
Yes, Anna, I wanted to highlight the same aspect of obviously the correlation between PTI and JUI-F. There is one factor I really want to highlight. I mean, first of all, if we look at PTI's stance right now, I think they have shown this, that whenever they will be they will be having an upper hand, that would be the best time for them to reconcile with their foes. I mean, everyone knows that JUI-F is their foe in KPK, and of course, if we talk about the Balochistan as well, the Pashtun belt of Balochistan, the only deterrence they used to get was from JUI-F, and it is an undeniable fact that JUI-F has the presence in shape of votes, in shape of course, their students, and in shape of their influence on ground. So even if we take the majority of the seats, I mean a large number of seats from KPK, on the second position in terms of votes, we are seeing JUI-F, and that is why I think it's a brilliant strategy by PTI to actually get them on board as well, so that for the future, of course, they are going to make the government in KPK, and of course, their future course they have in their mind is to, of course, keep on knocking around the same seats they have contested, and they have the Form 45s about Punjab Assembly as well and National Assembly. They want to protest against it, but at the same time they want to keep their backyard, which is of course the stronghold KPK. They want everything to be precisely peaceful out there. That is why JUI-F sitting with them is important for PTI, and we are seeing that they have joined hands, and there will be a peaceful KPK in coming days in terms of PTI's government out there. So to me, I think it was a brilliant decision which PTI has taken for their own political course, future course.
Okay, and I'll come back to you and explore that further, but I also have another follow-up with you, Waqqas, with reference to what you were saying, and I understand that there are legal routes that of course exist and are to be taken, and it is a political alliance, but I want to know whether or not in terms of sheer numbers or the fact that more people or more political parties get together and say the same things has an impact on the way the different proceedings are actually conducted, or how seriously things are pursued.
Right, and Waqqas, Sana is being polite. Let me say it this way. Earlier, when Imran Khan Saab was actually being summoned to various courts, he gathered a lot of crowds, and because of that, we saw that he got away with many concessions at that time. Is there possibility that if you agitate so much, it might have some kind of impact on verdicts as well?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, Sana, that's a very profound question. I mean, I think the world over, people who actually show up in courts and people who study courts are always thinking about this question, whether public pressure influences decisions reached by the judiciary, especially in high-profile political cases. In the past, yes, we have seen examples in Pakistan that popular and populist leaders both have sought to benefit from street power by sending a message to those adjudicating their cases that the public is with us. However, the public in Pakistan is not the only stakeholder. I mean, there's the government of the day, and there's an incoming government, and there's a political opposition. And in every political system, there are multiple stakeholders. So I think courts, unless they feel that the public has entirely swung to one side, they usually are not influenced that easily. One cannot say about individual benches how they might rule, but I think on the whole, I don't see a few protests largely influencing how decisions will be reached. I think the difficult task for PTI and the only essential legal task is to ensure that they have credible evidence before the election tribunal or the election commission, wherever they choose to fight these battles, uh, to substantiate their claims. And right now, I mean, the PTI has not been able to achieve much on that front. There have been no dramatic decisions, or no major overturnings. But like I said, I think their strategy will be to somehow take one case up to the Supreme Court and try and get a favorable order. And then if that comes out in their favor, I think they will use it and apply
As a
that
template.
logic and then
As a
translate
precedent.
that.
Sana,
Right.
if you would
I have
now,
I have one question also, a follow-up question. Then of course we are going to come to you, Sheikh Saab, as well.
Sure.
Because the question is for you regarding the timeline of proceedings in election tribunals. We are told that the timeline is sort of kind of infinite. That it can take anywhere between 1 year and 5 years in some challenges to find solution. Do you think that in retrospect lawmakers should actually fix this problem? Because how profound can a process be if it is a matter only of one constituency or one polling station or whatever that might be?
Well, thank you for that question. And I think you've pointed out a very important issue. I do think it's very important that election tribunals are held to account in the sense that they finally decide matters within a specific time frame. There are provisions in various laws in Pakistan which set down a certain time frame that decisions must be reached within X number of months. However, courts have held that those provisions are not mandatory and they are only directory, and you can't lodge a challenge against that if a judge or if a court, delays it beyond the period of 6 months or 9 months as may be specified in the law. But I think you're pointing to a very important issue because it's not just a legal issue. I think it translates into political frustration and political problems if decisions are not reached speedily. And that's why I hinted at the fact that the PTI will somehow try to raise a question which they can then convince the Supreme Court or the High Courts that it's for them to decide, and they will try to bypass the election tribunals. If they're able to do that, then things will get a lot more interesting. But if the matter stays with the Election Commission and then goes to the election tribunal, then I think PTI's opposition parties do not have much to worry about. I'm not saying they have a lot to worry about if it goes straight to the Supreme Court. I'm just saying that it gets much more interesting, and then the stakes are raised immediately, depending on what the Supreme Court rules as far as these rigging allegations are concerned.
Right. Daniyal, you wanted to add something?
yes, Waqqas Sahab, my question was that if the Supreme Court gives a judgment in a particular case, will the ECB be affected in its proceeding as far as the tribunals are concerned?
As a precedent?
Well, the general principle is, I mean, even in the Constitution, Article 225 is very clear that you cannot challenge an election except by going to an election tribunal. So that's the bar. If you go to the High Court or the Supreme Court to challenge an election, they point to Article 225 and they say, you cannot challenge an election by coming directly to us. You have to go to the ECP or to the election tribunal, and that's the route specified by the Constitution. So that's where the challenge lies for PTI, how to raise a question which they say is not challenging an election and is a broader issue related to fundamental rights or about something else, and they take it to the Supreme Court. Now, if they go to the Supreme Court, then whatever judgment the Supreme Court passes, assuming it happens, then yes, the ECP will be bound by that. So that's the outcome.
Because, like
Right.
you just said, a lot of the PTI candidates, I was reading in the newspaper, when they approached the High Courts, this is exactly what the High Courts told them. And the way I interpret it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the ECB is quite autonomous when it comes to its decisions of the tribunals, right?
Autonomous?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Constitution, like I said, is very clear that you can't challenge an election except by going to the election tribunal, or there are certain specified powers of the ECP under the Elections Act where you can raise certain other questions, for example, about recounts and repoll in certain specified situations. So it's very difficult to raise a question which you can then persuade the High Court or the Supreme Court to take up. So those petitions are generally not maintainable. But it just depends on the kind of evidence that PTI comes up with and whether their lawyers will be able to will be successful in persuading a high court or the Supreme Court that this is a broader issue and you should listen to this. It's unlikely, but as I said, that's what I think PTI's angle is going to be. And
Right.
that's the one thing that I think is, the thing that will come out of left field that will keep everyone much more interested. I don't think opposition parties, PTI's opposition parties, have much to worry about if all of this plays out before the election tribunal.
Right. With regards to the way that this is likely to unfold, then Farrukh, especially with the kind of legal requirements in place, then what really essentially is this political alliance is going to achieve, and how exactly will it do that? Then, if the alliance in itself is just existing with regards to riggings in elections, then how, in light of what Waqqas has just said, is it really helping PTI's or JUI-F's case? And then also with regards to the kind of protests that are being announced, do you think that is going to add any value to this cause, and whether or not there is going to be any serious causes of concern? Because the last time, of course, we saw PTI out on the streets, it was a huge ruckus and has been something of great consequence.
Right. I think that you keep referring to it as some kind of alliance. I think that they just sat together or stood together, and they in principle agreed that they are going to agitate against the alleged rigging. Amazingly, Maulana Fazlur Rahman's case is such that if you accept rigging proposition that there was a rigging in his constituency, then the proposed name for the CM, he is the guy who he is accusing of rigging the elections, right? And yet they are going to sit together or talk together. That is not all. Sana, the reason why the comfort with which they actually stood together, actually, qualifies my case that it is whenever a politician accuses the other one, it is very difficult to take their claims on face value. For example, Maulana Fazlur Rahman kept on calling Imran Khan Sahab Yahudi lobby, and Imran Khan would actually go to his jalsas and make fun of him as Diesel or something of that sort. And repeatedly Khan Sahab was asked to stop doing it, especially now we are hearing from the influential quarters as well, and he did not stop. And all of a sudden, everything is hunky-dory. So what am I going to make of all these accusations or allegations, right? Now the question regarding PTI's strategy, I mean, what Faisal was saying earlier can be right, but what I see is at this moment PTI is not in the mood to actually form the government, because they have a big concern. Their concern is that they always are afraid that their party can be hijacked by somebody else. That's why they sacrificed Shah Mahmood Qureshi and all the membership of the National Assembly when Imran Khan Sahab was actually pushed out of power, because they thought that there is a possibility that Shah Mahmood Qureshi might become Prime Minister, and that was not acceptable. So at this moment what they are doing is, I think they are in terms of agitation, they are just shopping for firepower. So who has people on the street? Maulana Fazlur Rahman came to Islamabad when PTI was in government, and he showed that he had considerable muscle.
True.
So they are actually just trying to collect all those people who might be interested in blockading the country or some kind of agitation.
But couldn't the same be achieved separately? If it's
that,
just
that,
about
that could, but when it comes to people actually getting together and proving their muscle, I think that nuisance value becomes more, and the ability becomes more when you have a coherent strategy how to go about it. Now, let me remind you that these legal pressures and these street pressures have actually worked in the past. If you remember, when Panama case was not being picked up by the Supreme Court, at that time Imran Khan Sahab had announced that there is going to be a lockdown, and it was locked down. By the way, I was locked out of my own home vicinity for something like 18 hours, right? Despite that, it happened, and after that we heard that the Supreme Court at that time wanted to take up the matter, and they did. In the end, they got whatever they wanted, right? So this can happen, but as you pointed out, now because May 9th has happened, and people know that there is a limit to violence that might actually erupt, then this whole idea of threatening becomes really, really a bit humorous, right? So in coming days, I think that what PTI is going to do is PTI is going to agitate, it is going to complain, but then it is going to sit in opposition and wait for the time when People's Party and PMLN actually grow apart, and at that time it can actually play to its advantage, and if it gets its seats, then what else do they need?
Yes,
Yeah, Sana, I wanted to obviously add into whatever Farrukh Bhai has highlighted.
Whatever.
He has highlighted brilliantly, and I just wanted to add in a few further things. I think looking at the current situation of Pakistan's economy, looking at the current situations of Pakistan as a state, whatever is going on, and internationally as well. I mean, there are not so many green signals for Pakistan right now in terms of internationally as well. There are wars going on. There are, of course, too much going on. So right now, taking a premier position in on the Constitution Avenue, it's like a you are jumping in a fireball. So this is the situation right now. So I think PTI
finally
itself,
he sees my point.
Yeah.
For 5 days I've been telling you, and you have been repeatedly telling me, no, this is not on. And now you see the point.
So I think PTI itself does not want to be on the Constitution Avenue in shape of obviously forming the government. So, and same is the case with Punjab province as well. Why I say Punjab province? I mean, CM Punjab position is so important right now. It's just like half of the Pakistan. Whenever we talk about Punjab, population of Punjab is half of the population of Pakistan. So whoever rules there is like he's deputy prime minister or she's deputy prime minister, we're talking about. So both of the governments, they are like sort of too dangerous for whichever the party takes the reins. Whoever comes into these offices, they are going to take a huge risk, and if they are successful, then they are heroes of this nation.
Yeah, but bigger the risk, bigger the reward if they succeed.
If they succeed, they are heroes, but if they don't, then consider it was the end of their politics.
Or there are footnotes in history.
Yeah. There's another thing that I want to explore, and Daniyal, I want your take on it with reference to what the JUI-F chief has also spoken about with regards to the former PTI chairman and the former Prime Minister's ouster, and the way that he's named elements of the establishment as being part of this controversy, as being part of this entire so-called plan. And this is, of course, something that a lot of people are questioning as to why is it coming out now? Why is it that JUI-F actually benefited for it, was part of the PTM government previously, and now this information is being put out? First, your take on why exactly it's happening at the moment, and then secondly, how does that then influence JUI-F in itself and puts into question its own tenure as part of the PTM government as well, and the way that his own relations have also benefited?
Okay, Sanaf, just give me a moment before moving on to JUI. I want to compliment Farrukh Bhai for the way he described the entire situation. I don't think anyone could have done a better job. Now, as far as JUI or Manaf Rahman is concerned, for him it's a win-win situation, and so is the situation with Chaudhry Shujat. Now, both these guys have got 1 or 2 seats, and main are going to their houses. They want alliances with them. So for him, I think it's a win-win situation. And as far as your question was concerned, it's too soon at the moment to judge any as far as Rana Fazl Rahman is concerned, because I wouldn't be shocked if tomorrow he joins the government. And I would like to take you back in history. I said it's a
good
situation for when Benazir Bhutto was forming, actually before in 88 when she was about to form her government, some people who were very, very anti-Bhutto, they came and met Nusrat Bhutto, and a lot of the People's Party workers were very upset about it, like Air Marshal Azhar Khan and other people. So at that time, Nusrat Bhutto gave a statement, and she said it's a victory of Qaeda-e-Awam Ghali Bhutto, that the people who were against him are sitting in his house today. So in Pakistani politics, if you manage to get somebody into your drawing room, it's considered a big victory. So at this point, I feel that Maulana Fazlur Rahman, he's the only winner in this situation, that he has managed to get basically Imran Khan or his representative to listen to him, and it's a huge achievement for him. But as far as his political future or his accusations are concerned, it's too soon to comment on them. Let's wait till the government formation. I wouldn't be shocked if he's sitting in the government.
Very quickly, I wanted to actually reciprocate the sentiment, but I just wanted to point out that from the point where I'm sitting, Maulana Fazlur Rahman might be the biggest loser. But okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Farrukh, I wanted to obviously compliment Daniyal's points as well. And at the same time, I wanted to say that PTI itself has gained a lot in terms that when we talk about, this narrative, the Form 45 narrative, I mean, who's helping them? There are two major political parties. TLP is one of them, who we used to see during Imran Khan's government on the roads all the time. And there is another one, Jamaat-e-Islami, who used to be their allies in 2013 and onward KPK government, and later on, of course, they didn't need them at all. And now both of them, they are actually giving their comments and statements related to on different constituencies, that they have the same Form 45s as obviously candidates backed by PTI they are having, and they are actually standing with PTI. So it's a huge win-win for all of the opposition parties as well. So I am seeing that all of the opposition parties, be it GDA, TLP or JI or JUI-F or PTI, all of them, they are quite strengthened as well this time around.
Yeah, and also with reference to the kind of alliance that we've seen with other parties, Faisal, you really think they're putting up a strong front?
Yeah, the ruling party, I mean the ruling
the alliance that you've just said with regards to the PTI and other parties.
Yeah, PTI and the other parties as well, and I must compliment Jamaat-e-Islami as well. I mean, in KPK they might have lost lot of momentum, but when it comes to, I mean, during these elections, whatever their achievements were in shape of getting votes from people in Karachi, in Hyderabad, be it few of the cities of Punjab, and then KPK as well.
I understand. I understand how we can look at the individual victories of these parties and the triumphs that they can celebrate. But I want, in terms of the kind of bloc that you just mentioned, with all of these different parties sitting together, is that really putting up a strong front to the other alliance?
Religious bloc, है ना?
It is a religious bloc, yes. It is a religious bloc, and of course they have actually gained in terms of their own revival as well. I'm seeing somebody from Karachi, of course, becoming the next Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami.
He is a strong candidate, but there are others also.
Yeah, he's a strong candidate, and the way I think things are shaping up for them in coming future in the largest metropoles of Pakistan, Karachi and Lahore as well, in coming
Seriously, Faisal, because you are complimenting them so much.
Yeah,
I was wondering whether you plan to run for public office.
No, not at all.
We'll actually come back to the alliance between PPP, PML and other parties as well. Yes, Daniyal.
The way Faisal Saab was complimenting the religious parties, I would like to add one small. It's so unfortunate that Jamaat-e-Islami is the only political party in Pakistan which is so democratic that being 30 years old, I'm going to be seeing their fourth Amir in my lifetime, and this is something that's very commendable. And I owe this, to Faisal Saab, because I had to compliment him. I had to pay back for his compliment.
Right. Well, because before we move on, I also want to explore a bit further with reference to what Maulana Saab has said just yesterday with the kind of elements that he's described and blamed for the ouster of the previous Prime Minister. And I want to know, in terms of issues of accountability, when we talk about political rhetoric, there is, of course, a lot of justifications given as how this is just part of politics and public rallies. And then we talk about alliances and no real friends and enemies is also said it's part of politics. But for something so serious as this, and something that of course was a major part of PTI's own narrative, claiming that this was a conspiracy, claiming that people were involved, claiming that elements of the establishment were involved, and now for JUI-F to come forward and sort of echo that, how much of the accountability then also rests on JUI-F, and how do we sort of navigate these blurred lines of accountability and investigate them?
Sanad, is this question for me?
This is for Waqqas.
Waqqas.
Oh.
Well, right now it's a bit of a he said, she said, or you said, I said situation where Maulana Sahib has said something, and it depends on how many people actually back it up. Of course, it's no secret that at times unelected forces in Pakistan's politics have had disproportionate influence. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that those legislators did get together and they decided to cast a vote. The vote of no confidence against Imran Khan. So I don't see it translating into actual accountability of, any members of the government or any members of the any arm of the government, be it the military establishment or.
But is it also okay, and is it also ordinary for a political party's chief to just comment on something and not having much attention being given to it?
Well, like I said, it depends on how much leverage it actually carries and how many people back him up. Right now, I mean, as you said, I think it's a very apt observation that he's kind of owning up to his own role also. So he doesn't come out looking exactly good, and it's not a flattering image of himself that he's portraying. So there will be questions asked as to how much of that is true. Of course, there is no secret that there was a lot of resentment against the PTI, considering how things were going. They weren't doing a great job of running the economy. And there was a genuine sentiment that opposition parties were just looking for the right moment to strike. And there was a vote of no confidence. And in defense of, the opposition parties, they will point to the Supreme Court judgment and they say, well, we undertook a measure and the speaker tried to stall it, and then the Supreme Court actually held that what we did was entirely legal. So, I mean, these backroom conversations that Maulana Sahib is now relaying, I think he's just using it as a political rhetoric. I don't know whether he's trying to score any points against PMLN. But as a lawyer, I don't see it translating into anything substantive, although it does make for interesting television or, theater for that matter. Yeah.
All right. Last question to you, Daniyal, with reference to the alliance that we were talking about earlier with the PMLN and PPP and other political parties getting together, there seems to be also concerns with regards to the PPP's decision of not being part of the cabinet. And of course, they're supporting the prime ministerial candidate of the PMLN, but they're also looking for putting up their own candidates for both houses of the parliament, and the PMLN, of course, has put in their own as well. How much of a cause of friction do you think that this can possibly be, or a cause of concern of the kind of legitimacy that the PPP or other political parties are giving to the PMLN's candidates, and whether or not we will be seeing both houses being headed by PPP?
I don't think PPP will be heading both houses. And I think I could be wrong, but at the moment they're not even interested in taking any executive responsibility. They only want to govern Sindh, considering the mandate. And they have no choice but to support PMLN and otherwise. So they won't even be able to rule in Sindh, because the federal government has to be intact for the provincial government to exist. And as far as like what I said earlier, it's a win. When I said it's a win-win situation for JUI, so I'm giving you a prediction. Either Maulana Fazlur Rahman is going to be part of the KPK government or the federal government, but he's not going to sit in the opposition.
All right. Thank you very much, Daniyal, for joining us, and we'll hopefully get you back sometime to discuss that, when that's true or not. And thank you very much, Waqqas, Ahmad, for joining us and being part of the discussion and helping us understand the legalities of various issues. With reference to, of course, what is going on at the political front also is having an impact on the economic front. And so we're also going to be exploring further in terms of how this is influencing the economic situation of the country. We already know that the stock market has taken a hit. There are, of course, other concerns in terms of preparations that need to be put in place with the IMF, with the standby arrangement also ending, and of course prices increasing. And just yesterday we also saw an increase in the gas prices by 67%, which is a huge amount for people, and of course is in line with the IMF conditions, but of course adds to the kind of economic woes that these political uncertainties seem to also be causing. So Farrukh, when we take a look at all of this, it seems that the political uncertainty is not going anywhere anywhere soon, and so even if we see perhaps gradually moving towards a semblance of a government, and then the cabinet, of course, with the prime minister in place, it seems that the political parties themselves, perhaps it's a question whether or not they'll be able to sustain that coalition and then have a strong government in place that can actually look into these challenges. So what really then are we dealing with?
Right. Sana, this is something amazing, you know. I don't know whether you remember, there used to be a movie called Austin Powers, where there's a truck that is coming towards a gentleman, and the guy starts crying, right, that he's going to be crushed. And then they actually give you the long shot, and you realize that the vehicle is really, really far away. And because the guy is paralyzed, that's why he gets eventually crushed under the vehicle, right? When you're talking about this country and its economics, no, I don't think that there's going to be some semblance of a government. There's going to be a government, right?
Yeah.
There's still a government even now as we speak. And regarding the economic situation, I think that this gas price hike, it might be a serious one, but there are two things which actually might cushion the people. It is being introduced at the almost at the end of the winters. So the massive household consumption is going to go incredibly down. Secondly, the concern was the circular debt that keeps on mounting. So it is important also to address that, right? Not this whole situation could have been cushioned by one very elaborate and easy solution, right? And that was bringing down the interest rate. When you bring down the interest rate, Sana, economic activity takes place. When economic activity takes place, people get more money. It is not cost pushed inflation, supply pushed inflation. It is essentially, regarding the ability of people to purchase and the way you have been actually introducing other factors, right? There is no dearth of commodity in the market right now. It is essentially the ability of the people that keeps on getting hit. So in coming days, what the next government has to do is make sure that it can address all these issues. Inflation has to come down. But I don't believe that stock market is a great indicator of how our economy is doing. I mean, a lot of speculators are sitting there and they keep on bringing the house down whenever they want, and that happens quite often. But regarding these important structural reforms, I think that if we are looking at the right government that is going to come into power, they will be able to address all these issues. And then don't forget, SIFC is going to play a very important role as well.
Right, and Faisal, when we talk about the setup right now, and then of course what's going to be formed, and then of course what Farrukh is saying with regards to SIFC, which essentially was formed for continuity of policies, how soon then can we see these changes happening? Because it seems that we're of course drawing close to another IMF engagement that we'll probably need to go to, or we should go to, the end of standby arrangement, the budget that has to be taken a look at by the new government, and all of this of course requires a lot of effort that's put there. And right now we're dealing with a lot of other political uncertainties. So how much do you think that the SIFC will be able to contribute in this regard, and how soon will the people be able to see some ease?
Yes, and obviously if we look at our economy, we know that our economic stability, I mean, we are seeking it since a long time, and that is directly impacted by political stability of the country, and that is why we have been in our show, we have been discussing it since long. And we have been discussing that political stability is the only stability that can ensure our economic stability. There are several factors which are affecting Pakistan. One of them is, of course, whatever is happening in the world, and that is impacting Pakistan's economy. But when we talk about internally, of course, there are many factors. I mean, we still have to talk to further talk to IMF, and if we look at the current interim setup, they have been so brilliantly talking to them, and I think whatever the lines they have been working on, that needs to be carried on by whoever comes in future, and they need to make sure that the mechanism which was being applied by the current interim setup, that needs to be carried on, and that needs to be implemented. That is why we are seeing that inflation in terms of gas prices that has increased, just because that is required to do it. It is one of the recommendations of IMF, and all of the recommendations of IMF, they need to be looked after by whoever comes into office.
It is not merely about the IMF.
IMF.
It is also about our own circular debt.
Exactly.
Do you want it to continue this way? It has to be brought down, right?
And obviously, if we talk about how to fix our economy in terms of increasing the dollar influx in Pakistan and all, of course we need to increase the exports, and the SIFC needs to be successful, and the lines they are working on. We can say that if the continuous work is being done and time is given to the SIFC, then there will be positive impact on Pakistan's economy, especially bringing the dollar home, and that is the only way forward for Pakistan.
Okay, and Farrukh, is that true even if whoever comes and leads the finance ministry?
Yeah. What do you want me to say? That man that you want to comment about is actually heading the coalition dialogue.
Yeah.
So do you want me to actually, alienate him already? No, I think that it will be very kind of any government that comes into power to actually try somebody new, or at least somebody who is actually a finance major, not an accountancy major. Right. So that might actually be able to solve the issue. But regarding this whole issue, story, Sana, why are the costs so high? Of course, they are imports, and because of that, you have to keep on adding to the prices. But then you realize that there is no dearth of supply. Everything is available. The only thing is that your and my purchasing power keeps on going down.
Yeah.
So what is the other solution? What People's Party kept on talking about, increase the income or purchasing power. How can that be achieved? If the economy starts working, if you have growth, if you have more businesses functioning in the country. So, and that happens when you actually remove the incentive to keep on saving or stashing your currency into accounts and start throwing the money into the market.
Yeah.
Right.
And that will happen when you bring down the interest.
Right. Thank you, Farrukh. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us as always. And of course, this brings us to the end of the show, and we will be back on Monday talking more about the political and economic situation. But that's all that we have from the show today, and we'll now see you on Monday. Have a nice weekend.